bandits just west of Thud Ridge coming south.
The duty of the fighter pilot is to patrol his area of the sky and shoot down any enemy fighters in that area. Anything else is rubbish. These compelling words, spoken by Manfred von Richthofen, the Red Baron, in 1917, are not only timeless but countryless, as they apply to anyone who straps into the cockpit of a fighter in defense of their homeland.
Robin Olds was flying the MiG-cap flight, which means they had 3 flights of F-4s plus all the flights of 105s going against this railroad yard. And so we're getting into the area, and I'm flying number 3, a crossbow 3. And as we starting into the area, we started hearing from Big Eye, which was a radar surveillance. Basically, they say bandits, bullseye, and it's really loud. It overcomes everything else that's going on conversation-wise. So we knew they had MiGs that day. Now, we didn't know whether they were 2117s or a combination.
2 bandits just west of Thud Ridge, 023 at 63, coming south.
And so the force commander immediately, got a hold of Robin, or basically said, hey Robin, we got the MiGs up, take care of our 6. Now, generally, if you had MiGs, you did not have SAMs, which, it's sort of, it is a good thing, because the SAMs were, they're very unpredictable. And we were coming in the afternoon, and we were coming from the west. And that's important, because it's going to play out here as I go through this. And generally speaking, in fighters, if you can arrange as an attacker to come out of the sun, which, like I said, this is the afternoon, so the sun's out in the west side direction. And we were coming from the west going southeast in toward our target, which was right outside of Hanoi. It's a bridge, basically, right outside Hanoi, and there was the railroad yard up the Northeast Railroad. And so we knew that's where the MiGs would probably be heading, and sure enough, the Big Eye started giving us vectors of which way the MiGs were going, and they were going out to the west, so we knew they were coming out there, and we assumed they were MiG-21s because that's just sort of their tactic.
Bandits just west of Thud Ridge coming south. Roger, understand.
And sure enough, we get coming inbound. Now we're approaching Thud Ridge, which is a big ridge that's northwest of Hanoi, and it goes up to 5,000 feet. It sticks up. I mean, you can see it all over. If it's on a clear day, you can see it almost from probably South Vietnam. It's huge, and it was a good cover for us, and it's the way we sort of came in. Anyway, as we're coming in, the vector on the MiGs from Big Eye started getting more in line with where we're headed, and so. We continued doing what we do. And we're all looking around, of course, but we're concentrating on flying our airplanes. And also we had these whizzies, we call them. They were ECM pods, and you had to fly a particular formation. It was like a stacked formation. And so you were sort of committed to flying formation as well as, keeping your position in the force and the flight. And so looking around was a little difficult. Just stare and crank your airplane, which normally you would be moving your airplanes so you can see behind you and so forth. But on this formation, you're sort of committed, and the F-4s were right behind my flight. As we're coming in, the Big Eye basically gave us now that they're coming in trail. And so the force commander hollered out to Robin one more time, watch for those MiGs, watch for the MiGs.
Your bandit's now about 146 degrees for 18 miles. Pulse flight, Ethan Charlie, your target's now bearing 224, 9 miles on your starboard side.
And somehow or another, as good as Robin was, and he was probably the greatest, finest combat leader that the Air Force has ever had, and pilot to boot. But somehow the MiGs got through. They were doing about 1.2 Mach, which is 1.2 times the speed of sound. They're smoking, in other words. And it's hard to see them. If you look at a MiG-21 on head on, you can't really see the airplane. It's so small in the profile. So anyway, they come through and launch 2 ATOL missiles, and they knocked 2 of the F-4s down right behind my flight. So even though those poor guys got it, they probably saved our flight because we could have easily been the target. We were right at the back of force. Anyway, the two F-4s go down. Now we got guys bailing out, beepers going off, and Mayday, 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 I'm hit, get out, get out. All this crap is going on. We ain't even gotten to the target yet. And so it really started the whole day. So now we keep on going because that's just what you do. Number one, in that particular area, there is no rest cap, which is a shame, but that's just life in that environment we worked in. You can't get SAR or rescue up there to help people if they're in that area. And so we continued on, and those guys, all that was still taking place. Robin got sort of tied up trying to see what he could do for those guys, which was nothing really, but he was trying. So we continued on, and now as we're coming in to the target area, we start, we picked up the railroad yard, which was our target, and you roll in as a flight basically, 1, 2, 3, and we were either 3 or 4, and I can't really remember whether we were 3rd or 4th flight in. As luck would have it or not have it, about 15 seconds before we rolled in on the target, in a fighter you have what's called a reticle, and it's your sight that is projected up on your windscreen right in front of you, so you're looking right through it. And it's got like rings with a dot in it, and that's called a pipper. Well, that's what you use to aim with, whether it be a bombing mission or whether it be air-to-air like MiGs or whatever. That's what you use to aim with, to help you get accuracy. Well, there's a little thing, there's about 10 cents worth of bulb that projects that sight up on your what's called a combining glass, and that's what you look through. And about 15 seconds before I roll in, all of a sudden my sight went bloop, and that little bulb had burned out. And so I didn't have any sight at all in my damn airplane, and here I'm getting ready to roll in. Well, that wasn't a big deal, really, because I've been there, done that. I had about 30 missions, Pac 6, or 50 missions, or whatever it was at the time. So, I knew the airplane, so I wasn't worried about that at that time. Later that counted though, because the F-105 at that point in time and space in the military hardware department had probably the most sophisticated fire control system of any fighter in the world. And the 105, and it was extremely accurate, deadly accurate. In fact, one of the missions right before I went to Southeast Asia, I had been on a DART mission.
This is an instrument of flight, our most advanced aerial gunnery target, known as the DART. It's the first so far that can stand the stress of supersonic flight.
And had the opportunity to shoot a DART. We had a DART and a DART spare because we were all requalifying. And I was number 2, and number 1 went in, his gun jammed. And then I went in and I knocked the DART down, so they brought in the DART spare. Now I'm going back on the pistol. Number 3 goes in and he misses the DART. Number 4 comes in, he misses the DART. And Bob Spielman, who was leading the flight, said, "Dave, you got anything left?" And I said, "I don't know, I might." So I went in and I shot the second DART down. But I really knew that airplane. And so I really wasn't worried about the sight anyway on the bombing run. Come down, drop my bombs, and flak's going off. You can see the red streaks going by the cockpit and all this stuff. So you get through that, and then now we're coming off the target, and you always brief a rejoin after your bombing mission, because at that point you're sort of spread out. And so we had already briefed. Hal Henning was leading the flight. And like I said, I was crossbow 3, he was crossbow 1. And so it was pre-briefed to go head north, rejoin, and then come back to the west for egress back home, back to the tank. So I'm turning in my turns to the right off the target, looking for Hal, and as I'm doing so, I looked over to the west, and there's an F-105, and he's got 2 MiG-17s trapped on his tail, and he's leading them around Hanoi. And seriously though, I mean, he was going straight and level, and I assumed he was still going around 550 knots, which we never, ever got slower than 550 knots in the Hanoi target area. And you always are cranking the airplane around and you're clearing your 6 constantly, because especially on a day when there's MiGs, and there were MiGs. We saw MiG-17s when we got to the target area. I left that out. that there were MiG-17s in the target area. We still do what I do because our mission was to hit the railroad yard. Well, this guy, I don't know whether he was trying to give them some formation practice or what, but seriously, there was 2 MiGs. Here's the 105. Here's the lead MiG. Number 2's out to the west or the right on a fighting wing position. The lead MiG is dead 6 on the 105. And he's firing at the 105. The smoke and the fire, I could still see it just like it was yesterday, was coming out of that MiG's nose as he's shooting at the 105. And so I hollered out over the radio, 105 head west, you got 2 MiGs on your ass, do something. Well, there was 20 105s up there, and everybody by then, normally, as soon as you come off the target, you change to squadron free. Because there's so much communication, you can't hear each other. So anyway, that didn't do any good. He's still going straight and level. So I just immediately, here I am, a dumb shit lieutenant, but I knew what to do, and I hit the panic button, which cleans off. If you see a 105, you've got big tanks, and you got a bomb rack underneath the airplane, and that cleans everything off except for the 2 outboard stations. One has an ECM pod on the right side. The left side, I had a sidewinder. Well, that would really be cool, especially didn't have a sight. And so anyway, I cleaned it off, and then I zero-G the airplane. And when you got a high wing-loaded airplane, like the 105, and you zero-G it, you take all the induced drag off the airfoils of the airplane, and it allows the airplane to really accelerate rapidly. Well, with a nose-low attitude, which I had, and zero-G, and I mean, this airspeed was really cranking because I'm full blower, wide open on that throttle, because the guy is just, I mean, it's like seconds before he's getting shot down. And so I'm turning to the west, and I'm taking the airplane down, and I think I got somewhere around 500 feet above the ground. And I'm not even really looking at the scenery at that point, although it probably was pretty cool, especially going that fast. But I wanted to get low so I could come up on these MiGs from underneath so they wouldn't see me coming. Well, now I got this sidewinder on my left outboard, and it's just growling. It sees a heat source, which is what a heater or sidewinder, it senses an IR signature, and it's all based on heat. Well, there's this MiG-17 behind a 105 with an engine 4 times bigger than the MiG-17. I have no sight. Sure would be nice to hit the button and launch that sidewinder, but I would never have been able to live with myself had that winder gone for the 105. And so I just had to turn the volume on. It basically gives you an aural sound that lets you know it's looking at a target. Now I have no sight, have no sidewinder that's available, so I'm going in without any of that stuff, but I have one of the most beautiful guns that was ever made. It was an M61 Cannon Vulcan. It fired 6,000 rounds a minute of 20 millimeter high explosive shells. So anyway, I go in and with the intention of getting these guys off of them. And as I'm coming in, I didn't know how fast I was going because I didn't look down. I was still concentrating on the MiGs and so forth. And I decided what I wanted to do was go for the right guy, roll over from him, come in on that bird, roll on him on the top of the lead. Seemed like a good plan at the time. And then as I'm getting closer, all of a sudden, something in this little lieutenant's brain starts saying, "You got one hell of a closure rate, Lieutenant." And so I looked down, and I was doing 1.3 Mach, which was basically 1,000 miles an hour, if you really equate the altitude and the airspeed. So I said, "Oh my God." So I pull the throttle back, I pop the speed brakes, and I'm rolling over to the second outboard MiG, and I start pulling on him, and I see I'm going to overshoot, so I pull harder and harder and harder. And I pulled about 8.5 Gs, but very smoothly. And as I'm coming up on the MiG, I opened up my cannon, but I'm a rocket ship at this point. So I fire and I hit the MiG in the wing. It doesn't show up on the film or anything, but I hit him in the wing, and now I'm going ballistic, and I go to about 10,000, 12,000 feet. And then I roll over, and I'm upside down, looking down. There's a bunch of clouds. I'd actually gone through some clouds. And right out from underneath this this bunch of clouds. Here comes a MiG-17. This airplane right here, except it was silver. This is not the one. It's the same airplane, but mine was silver. So I pulled down on this guy, and like I said, I'd fired a lot of dart. I really knew the airplane. I lowered my nose, and I opened up, and the first bullets went right into the fuselage of the airplane. Unfortunately, they went right through the cockpit. And so the guy never got out, and he just did a slow roll over. And he was full burner now. This one, actually, by the way, when I first came up on him, the 105 was going so damn slow, they didn't even have to have their afterburner. Well, this one had his afterburner, because now I had busted up their whole program. And he just rolled over and hit the ground. And so I'm coming out, and now I'm looking at my fuel gauges, and they're starting to say, Lieutenant, you better watch out. You're pretty low on gas. So anyway, I shot up to about 35,000 feet, and I called Hal up on the radio, because I couldn't even talk when all this was going on. I never said anything what was going on. I said, Hal, I got a damn MiG, I got a MiG. So anyway, that's just part of the fighter business. And we going up on the tanker, and then I drop in, get my gas, I'm okay, and got home, and first question everybody asked was, did the guy get out? And that was that common bond, enemy versus each other. There's still respect for the driver, for the pilots. About 10 years ago, a friend of mine that I flew with at Talcali, Mo Baker, he was in the 357th with me, and I'd flown with him a lot. Well, he was shot down the morning of the 23rd and was a POW, and he shared a cell with a guy who's a close friend of his was in our intel division. And they're the ones that monitored the radio frequencies. They are the ones that read all the secret documents that they could get their hands on. Well, after the war, he'd gotten into the Vietnamese culture and really and went over there a lot and read a lot of their stuff. Well, he was reading a magazine. This is about 12 years ago. He was reading some article in a newspaper or magazine, whatever, and they was talking about they were cutting a new road in north of Hanoi. And in the process, they ran across aircraft wreckage. So the protocol was to turn it over to the Defense Department, because it could be live ordnance. Who knows, you know. So the military excavates the site. They found the remnants of a MiG-17. In the MiG-17, they found partial fragments of a body, you know, the bones and stuff like that, which would be normal to be expected. But they also found a wallet. The wallet was totally readable. They took it back to what they call the House of Records and went through the documents. It was belonged to Le Van Phong, who was shot down August 23rd, 1967. And that was my kill. And anyway, Mo Baker, his friend, he called and told him about this and sent this article to him. And Mo knew that was my kill. And so he calls me one Saturday afternoon. I'm in my basement working on an old Porsche I've got. And he said, "What are you doing, Dave?" And I told him, and he said, "Well, sit your ass down, Lieutenant." And we always had that rapport. It was one of those fun things. And so I did, and I said, "What's up, Mo?" And he said, "Well, I got something to tell you." And he told me the story. And he said, "What's your email?" So I told him. And so he sent me the whole article. And honestly, guys, that was probably one of the weirdest Saturday afternoons I've ever spent, emotionally. But he was 1 year older than I was, and he was doing for his country what I was doing for mine. It's sort of weird, I know, but it's just the irony was, here I am. I've got the fighter with the most sophisticated fire control system in the world. Had I had the sight, I was good enough. I could put that pipper on any part of that airplane, because he did not know I was there. I came in on him. I did everything right in that respect, and I could have put that pipper on any part of that airplane, and that's where if I pulled the trigger, that's what I'd hit, and I would have gone for the engine or the wing. As it turned out, in a way, I was too good at it, and I bore-sighted the cockpit. Not knowing it, but that's where everything went, and it took him out. And if I had my way, he could have punched out. Granted, he would have come back another day and been against us, but that's how I was taught. So what I did, I had the opportunity this past fall of going over to Hanoi. A bunch of us had air-to-air engagements. Went over to Hanoi, and we actually met our Vietnamese counterparts that flew engagements against us. And it was one of the coolest things that I could have ever been a part of. And what I did is I made up a plaque. I used one of my patches, 105 patches, and a name tag that I actually used when I was flying combat. And I made this plaque and presented it in his honor.
And see the entire film, now streaming on Amazon and Tubi TV. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment below so as not to miss new upcoming videos. Thanks for watching.